Simone de Beauvoir didn't say women are born oppressed. She said, they become. But what does that mean? It means a woman's body stops being hers and becomes a story written by someone else. Her skin, her curves, her movements become symbols, tools, expectations. She doesn't get to just be. She becomes the other, not the center, not the subject, just a mirror for someone else's meaning. This isn't just metaphor, it's a sentence. Her flesh is no longer freedom. It's destiny, disguised as biology. But it's not her destiny. It's a role, a performance, a costume stitched by society. Beauvoir saw this with ruthless clarity. A woman's oppression begins the moment her body stops being her home and becomes a prison dressed as identity. Close your eyes for a second. Think about the first time you were told that love would save you. Now ask yourself, who wrote that story? Maybe it was the movies. Maybe it was your mother. Or maybe it was a song on the radio that made pain sound like passion. For generations, women have been fed a narrative so deeply woven into our culture that we stopped questioning it. Romantic love, the idea that someone else's validation, attention, and desire could give us worth. But here's the truth. Simone de Beauvoir dared to say out loud, "This kind of love is a Trojan horse. It looks like freedom, but it's submission, dressed in roses." In The Second Sex, Beauvoir breaks the illusion. A woman is not born to love like this. She's taught. She's trained to believe that love is her highest achievement. Not creation, not discovery, not her own freedom, but connection to a man. Think about the pattern. She is told to love with her whole being, to sacrifice, to serve, to soften, to wait. And when she does, she's celebrated until she vanishes. Because in the kind of love culture teaches women, her identity is absorbed, piece by piece. It's like pouring yourself into someone else's cup until there's nothing left in yours. And when you're empty, they ask why you're no longer glowing, and you apologize for not being enough. This isn't love. This is disappearance. And Beauvoir saw it with terrifying clarity. A woman who believes love is her purpose will never question the cost of loving too much, because she was never taught to measure it. Take a look at our stories. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, The Little Mermaid. In every tale, the girl waits. She's passive, beautiful, silent, desirable. And when the man arrives, she is saved. But what did she give up? Her voice, her freedom, her name. Even now, in modern culture, the narrative shifts slightly, but the core remains. She's still encouraged to find herself through another, to love in a way that costs her time, identity, dreams. And what happens when she doesn't want to love that way? When she chooses herself, she's called cold or selfish or broken, because this system wasn't designed for her independence. It was designed to reward her erasure. Beauvoir warned us, when a woman confuses sacrifice for love, she will keep giving, long after she's lost herself. So I ask you now, not as a philosopher, but as a human, have you ever loved in a way that made you disappear? Pause. Breathe. Let that question land. Because true love, the kind that liberates instead of limits, isn't taught. It's chosen. It begins the moment you no longer trade your worth for someone else's presence. Beauvoir didn't hate love. She hated what love was turned into. A script, a cage, a mirror that only works when someone else is looking. The real revolution? is to love without losing yourself. So maybe the new definition of love is this: not who completes me, but who lets me stay whole. And maybe the most radical thing a woman can say is, I choose me, and I can still love you. They say she's a miracle, the mother. But have you ever wondered what it cost her to become one? In a world that glorifies motherhood as the highest form of womanhood, no one asks what gets buried beneath that crown. We worship the image of the mother, nurturing, selfless, radiant. But behind the smile, behind the lullabies, there's often a woman who is slowly fading. Simone de Beauvoir didn't attack motherhood. She attacked the myth that motherhood must mean martyrdom. She saw how society romanticized the disappearance of the woman behind the mother. Because, let's be honest, when we celebrate good mothers, what are we really praising? Women who never complain, who give without asking, who forget themselves to raise someone else. But what happens when a woman is expected to live only for others? She stops living for herself. It's like giving birth to the world and having no space left for your own soul. You become a vessel, not a voice, a function, not a subject. And Beauvoir saw the cruelty in that. That motherhood, when forced or overly idealized, isn't a blessing. It's a slow erasure of the self. Many mothers love deeply, fiercely, but love shouldn't mean extinction. You can nurture without disappearing. You can give life without giving up yours. And yet, so many women were never told that was possible. They were told that to be a real mother was to put themselves last. Always. But what if we changed the story? What if motherhood was no longer a measure of sacrifice, but a celebration of coexistence? You don't have to vanish to be a mother. You don't have to bleed identity to be whole. Beauvoir's truth still echoes today. The mother is powerful, but only when she is allowed to remain a woman too. There are women who walk into a room and immediately dim their own light. Not because they want to, but because they've learned it's safer that way. We often talk about silenced women, but what about the ones who silence themselves? Not out of fear of speaking, but because the world punishes them for speaking too much. Simone de Beauvoir saw this. That intelligence in women is often treated like a threat, not a gift. A brilliant woman doesn't intimidate because she's wrong, but because she refuses to shrink. And so, many learn early. Be smart, but not too smart. Speak, but don't correct him. Shine, but only if it makes him look brighter. It's the archetype of the invisible witch. The woman with a mind full of fire, who whispers her truth behind closed doors because the world isn't ready for her voice in public. Think about it. In school, she raises her hand and gets eye rolls. At work, she speaks up and gets labeled too much. At home, she questions and is told she's overthinking. So she learns not to be small, but to act small, to carry galaxies in silence. And over time, that silence becomes a habit, a mask, a shield. If this is you, if you've ever felt like you had to dull your brilliance just to be accepted, I want you to hear this. There is nothing wrong with the fire in your voice, with the depth of your thoughts, with the strength of your words. Beauvoir didn't just celebrate female intellect, she defended it, because she knew how rare, how radical, and how revolutionary it was for a woman to think freely and say it out loud. So maybe the next revolution won't be televised. Maybe it'll be whispered, then spoken, then roared. Not for applause, but for liberation. Because silence isn't safety, It's a cage with velvet walls, and your voice? It was never meant to echo inside them. It was meant to shatter them. What if your entire existence depended on whether or not someone else was looking at you? Not looking with love, not with understanding, but with desire. Because for many women, the first time they feel seen is the moment they are sexualized. And that, Beauvoir warned us, is where identity begins to fracture. In a world built on the male gaze, a woman's reflection is often not her own. It's borrowed, shaped, distorted, and approved by someone else's desire. She learns not who she is, but how to appear. To be attractive is to be acknowledged. To be invisible is to be erased. So she adapts. She paints herself, dresses herself, moves through the world not as herself, but as a projection of what others want her to be. And when no one's watching, she wonders if she still exists at all. It's like being a mirror that only works when someone else stands in front of it. She doesn't see herself. She sees their gaze, their approval, their hunger. And when that gaze shifts elsewhere, she's left with silence. A silence that echoes with questions. Am I still beautiful? Am I still relevant? Am I still here? This isn't vanity. It's survival in a world where a woman's presence is often reduced to aesthetic. And it's not just men. It's media. It's culture. It's history. Simone de Beauvoir saw this violence for what it is. Not a compliment, not empowerment, but erasure disguised as validation. When a woman learns to see herself only through others, she loses the ability to recognize her own reflection. So what happens when she stops performing, when she stops waiting to be wanted, and starts witnessing herself? That's when presence begins. Real presence. Not filtered, not approved, not posed. Just her. Unapologetically whole. Not a reflection, but a force. Because the most radical act a woman can do is to see herself clearly. Even when no one else is watching, there's a moment when she opens her eyes. And everything she once called home no longer fits. Not her roles, not her routines, not even her reflection. Freedom, for men, is a celebration. For women, it's often exile. Simone de Beauvoir didn't promise that awakening would be easy. She warned, the woman who breaks free from her imposed identity doesn't find peace. She finds emptiness. Because once she no longer plays the roles expected of her, daughter, wife, mother, muse, who is she? The world doesn't have a name for her anymore. And neither does she. It's like walking barefoot across shattered mirrors. Each step hurts, but every shard reflects a piece of who she really is. Freedom is not a reward. It's a reckoning. And yet, it's the only path forward. Because even if she doesn't know where she belongs yet, she finally belongs to herself. She no longer yells. She no longer pleads. She simply stops nodding. And that shakes the world. We were taught to expect revolutions with fire, fists, and fury. But Beauvoir foresaw a different kind. A rebellion without noise. A refusal without apology. The new woman doesn't need to explain herself anymore. She doesn't ask for permission. She doesn't soften her no with a smile. Because the world taught her to whisper, to shrink, to serve. And now, she simply doesn't. That's her protest. She doesn't show up for the performance. She doesn't carry what was never hers to hold. This isn't anger. This is clarity. A woman, standing in a room, not flinching, not bending, not performing. That silence, that stillness, that's revolution. Beauvoir knew it. One day, women would stop screaming to be heard and start living as if they already were. And that day is now.